On July 26, 2016, a man by the name of Satoshi Uematsu broke into a care center in Sagamihara, Japan that housed many mentally disabled patients and began a stabbing spree. The 26-year-old started his vicious attack around 2:30 a.m. after arriving with a bag of knives and smashing a window to gain entry into the facility. He then proceeded to enter rooms one by one where he stabbed and slit the throats of dozens of helpless patients. Within 40 minutes, 19 people were dead and 26 others were left injured. Uematsu then returned to his car and left, turning himself into the police around 2 hours later. It was soon revealed that Satoshi Uematsu had been a former employee at the facility just months earlier, but was let go after expressing his feelings that the mentally disabled should be euthanized. Police notified his employers about their concerns after Uematsu sat outside the home of one of the members of Japan's parliament for 2 hours so he would take a letter. The letter contained a disturbing rant from Uematsu, who talked about euthanizing the mentally disabled and killing 470 disabled people at 2 different facilities before he would intentionally turn himself into police. Uematsu was confronted about the letter and insisted he was correct about his theory, so he was fired from the care center and submitted to a psychiatric hospital by the authorities. At the hospital, doctors diagnosed Uematsu with mental conditions that could be harmful to others around him, but within 9 days they concluded that Uematsu was no longer a threat and released him. After his release, he was returned to his home, which was located near the care center where the killings took place.
Anthony Dwayne Lee was an American actor and playwright who appeared in many movies and television shows in the 80s and 90s. While attending a Halloween party on October 28, 2000, Lee was fatally shot by an officer of the LAPD. On the night of Lee's death, he was at a friend's house in Los Angeles for a costume party. Around 1 a.m., officers Terrell Hopper and Natalie Humphreys arrived at the party in response to a noise complaint. After being escorted to the kitchen by a security guard, Officer Hopper decided to wander around the grounds before the host could be informed of their arrival. Hopper searched the dark and narrow path area behind the home with his flashlight before coming upon a glass door. Behind the door stood Lee dressed as a red devil with his friend, fellow actor Jeff Denton. The two were in Denton's bedroom chatting with another actor when they saw Officer Hopper's flashlight shine through the glass door. Officer Hopper then shot through the glass door 9 times, hitting Lee a total of 4 times, once in the head and 3 times in the back. Lee died at the scene. Officer Hopper later said he fired his weapon because Lee aimed his replica gun at him and was unaware that the gun was not real. The police chief at the time defended Officer Hopper and called the incident an accident. The chief maintained that Lee pointed a very realistic replica gun at Officer Hopper, and that's why the officer opened fire. However, after autopsy reports showed Lee had been shot once in the back of the head and 3 times in the back, the LAPD was accused of using improper force and withholding facts about the entry wounds. The suit filed by Lee's only surviving immediate family, his sister, never came to trial because the security guards working at the party, the key witnesses, could not be found by the trial date. The case was settled out of court in his sister's favor. In October 2001, the LAPD Internal Review Board ruled that Officer Hopper's actions were justifiable and he was in policy using deadly force. According to LAPD officials, the board also recommended that Officer Hopper seek additional training to improve his tactics. Rebecca Gayheart is an American actress best known for her roles in Urban Legend and Jawbreaker. On June 13, 2001, Gayheart struck and killed 9-year-old George Cruz with her car after trying to pass a line of vehicles that had stopped to let the boy cross the street. As Miss Gayheart was heading down a street in LA, she came across 3 cars that were stopped for reasons unknown to her. Instead of waiting for the cars to begin moving again, Gayheart decided to pass around the vehicles at 40 miles per hour using a 2-way left turn lane. It was then her car hit the 9-year-old who was crossing in the middle of the street. George Cruz was taken to the hospital, but died the next day from his injuries. Rebecca Gayheart did not have alcohol or drugs in her system, but it was later discovered she was talking on her cell phone at the time of the accident. In October of that same year, just a few months after Rebecca Gayhart hit and killed 9-year-old George Cruz with her car, she rolled a rental car she was driving into 2 parked cars. The boy's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Miss Gayhart that was settled out of court. On September 18th, a charge of misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter without gross negligence was filed against Gayhart. She pleaded no contest, and on November 27th was sentenced to 3 years probation, the suspension of her driver's license for a year, a $2,800 fine, 750 hours of community service, and was ordered to produce a safe driving video.
"49 people were killed and 46 others were injured after an explosion caused a fire in a fireworks factory in Tangerang, Indonesia. The incident took place on October 26, 2017, after 2 workers were ordered to do welding on the roof of the factory, directly above 4.5 tons of fireworks material. The sparks from the welding set off a mound of gunpowder in a massive explosion that could be heard from miles away. Both of the welders managed to escape, but the other 103 workers on shift were trapped inside due to a padlock sealing the exit gate. The explosion happened in a warehouse next to the factory, but a fire quickly spread and consumed both buildings. Some of the workers managed to climb their way out, but most of them fled to the back of the building to evade the rising flames. Sadly, most of them were killed from smoke inhalation, while others died in the explosion and fire. Almost all of the workers were women, and several were children between the ages of 14 and 16. An investigation revealed that the owner had a permit to run as a toy factory with a maximum of 10 employees, and was not permitted to make fireworks. Zoning laws were violated due to the factory being located near schools and residential homes. They also found workers were being paid half of the minimum wage. Reports claim the factory had only been open for less than 2 months. The event is considered the deadliest industrial accident in Indonesia. On July 10, 2004, 29-year-old Bradley Adrian Smith was surfing with friends at Left-Handers Beach in Gracetown, Australia, when a massive shark lunged out of the ocean and bit his surfboard in half. Smith fell into the water, where a second shark began attacking him. His friends could only watch in horror as both sharks began to tear him apart. Witnesses claim both sharks viciously attacked Smith for nearly a minute before he disappeared under the waves. After his body floated back to the surface, his friends risked their lives to drag him to shore. One of Mr. Smith's friends, Mitch Campbell, said, "It was the worst thing I have seen. There was so much confusion out there, it was impossible to tell which shark was attacking, but they kept coming at him time and time again. You could see Brad trying to whack at them to keep them away. We were shouting, 'Swim for your life, mate, swim for your life,' but he obviously didn't have a chance. They were massive. He put up such a brave fight. He was punching away and there was water and blood everywhere." Smith's injuries were not revealed to the public, but some reports claim the 29-year-old was bitten in half. One witness said the body of the larger shark was about the width of a car, and its open jaws were as wide as a man's arm. Another person claims they saw a dorsal fin about 3 feet high out of the water. Experts believe the 2 sharks were great whites based on their size and the location of the attack. Police combed the ocean waters of Western Australia in search of the man-eaters, but the sharks were never found. On December 5, 2009, 25-year-old Vladimir Lakonos was home from college for the holidays at his parents' house in Konotop, Ukraine, when his family heard a loud pop noise come from his room. When they went to check on him, they found him with his jaw and most of the lower parts of his face blown off. His family immediately called for medical aid, but Vladimir was dead within minutes. Vladimir Lakonos had been a chemistry student for several years at the Kiev Polytechnic Institute, and spent much of his time experimenting with various chemicals while he was home for the holidays. Authorities believe Vladimir mistook an exploding powder he was working with for citric acid, which he often dipped his gum in to give it a prolonged sour taste. Police found packets of citric acid next to the unknown substance and claim both powders look very similar. A bomb squad was called in to deal with the situation after police feared the explosive substance might be too volatile to transport. On April 26, 2013, 41-year-old Hugo Avalos Channon was cleaning an industrial meat blender for the Interstate Meat Distributors Company in Clackamas, Oregon, when he fell into the blender feet first. His co-workers heard his screams of agony and raced to shut off the machine, but authorities say Mr. Channon was already dead by the time they reached him. Firefighters were called in the next day to dismantle the machine and remove his body. Hugo Channon worked for DCS Sanitation Management, which was hired to clean the machinery in the meat processing plant. No one is certain how Channon fell in, but an investigation by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration concluded that a coupling connecting two hoses may have switched the machine on while Mr. Channon was spraying it with hot water. They then theorized that part of the hose got caught on a mixing bar and slowly pulled Hugo Channon in feet first due to the hose being wrapped around his body. A state medical examiner said Channon died from blunt force injuries and chopping wounds. During the investigation, other DCS Sanitation Management employees were observed with hoses wrapped around their bodies as they worked. The Health Administration fined DCS Sanitation $6,300 and Interstate Meats $450 for safety violations. Health Administration inspectors had cited Interstate Meat in October 2012 after finding that machinery in the meat grinding room wasn't properly locked down during cleaning. One inspector said, "An unexpected startup of the machine could cause injuries." Hugo's family filed a $5 million lawsuit against Interstate Meat Distributors for failing to uphold their safety regulations.